Hi folks, Todd Keppel here with the Klamath County Museum. We're here to share the fourth in a series of videos that we're doing with our program that we call Photo of the Week. Before I show you the photo, I just want to ask you a question. Do you have a favorite historic site somewhere here in Klamath County? Like maybe you really love the spot where George Nurse started the little town of Linkville back in 1867, or maybe you're a fan of the Applegate Trail or the Marine Barracks site up at the top of Old Fort Road, or the spot where Fort Klamath was established back in 1863. Well, for our photo of the week for this week, we're taking you to a different kind of a spot that you might not have thought of as a historic site, but it's got some pretty interesting history. For our photo of the week for April 7th, 2019, we're bringing you to the Klamath County Landfill. Yes, folks, we are talking trash today. So when we talk about trash, you may wonder, where did people put their garbage in the olden days? Or maybe you've never wondered that, but we're going to tell you anyway. The answer is that a century or more ago, people just threw their garbage any place. For instance, we're out here on the north end of town. You can see Crater Lake Parkway behind me, and there's a can dump out here. It's very typical of what you find various places around town and of course out in the countryside. So here's a nice rusty tin can, and in the center of it you'll see where there was a vent hole from when they were sealing up the can. When the product was in the can and they were ready to seal it up, they just cover that up with some lead solder. And then when the customer bought the product, they would punch a hole in one side. Let's say maybe they had canned milk in here. They would let the canned milk drain out one side, and the other side would be for ventilation to allow the liquid to come out. So yeah, they were just chucking these cans anywhere. By the way, that type of pattern there with the hole in the center of the can and lead solder tells us that can probably dates to the late 1800s or maybe very early 1900s. Now we know in 1915 from newspaper accounts that people in Klamath Falls were taking their garbage down to the edge of Lake Ewana, somewhere around the end of Klamath Avenue as a matter of fact, and just throwing their garbage in the marshy edge of the lake. And then in 1926 the city announced it was opening a landfill. Of course they didn't use the word landfill, it was just called the city dump. And it was somewhere in the Stewart Lennox area. We're not sure exactly where. If someone knows that, we'd love to have that information. And so that landfill served for about 10 years. And then in 1935, the city announced that it was opening a brand new landfill dump, I should say, about a mile east of town on Old Fort Road. And that brings us to our photo of the week for Sunday, April 7th, 2019. Our photo of the week, we think, was probably taken about 1955 or so. Somewhere in this very spot here, where I'm standing now, maybe 100 feet or more above where they were back in about 1955 when they took this photo. So the photo taken about 20 years after the landfill opened, and at that time, as you can see, they were just pouring material onto the ground, and they had a little Caterpillar tractor there that they leveled the material off with. We got a couple of old trucks there in the photo and an automobile. And then when we look in the background of this photo, you can see some cars that have been abandoned up at the top of the landfill. I know one story we heard from Gary Mattis is that when he was a kid, they'd come up to the landfill and they ripped a hood off of one of the old abandoned cars up there. It was in the winter time, and they went coasting on that car hood down one of the hills up here at the landfill. Gary said when they got to the bottom of the hill, they didn't want to carry the car hood back to the top, so they just went back up and got another car hood off of a different car and took another ride. With nearly 85 years of history in the operation of the Klamath County Landfill, you might imagine there's been some interesting things that have happened over all that time. One kind of sad thing that happened was the death of Harry Gibbs, an individual who, for whatever reason, was just hanging out here at the landfill, and he fell into the pit. And at that time, they had a fire going down in the pit, and Mr. Gibbs didn't survive. He was, the doctor said, literally cooked to death in the fire at the landfill. Not the way I would like to go. In this very area here, apparently there was a pet cemetery. In those days you could bring animals that had passed away and they could be buried up here. Keith Reed, a former supervisor at the landfill up here, likes to tell the story about the time someone brought their beloved St. Bernard up here to be buried. And so they proceeded to bury the dog, and then a short time later, for whatever reason, perhaps the dog bloated, but the dog surfaced again, and so they buried the dog again. And then I guess he did that a couple of times. Keith said they just couldn't seem to keep that St. Bernard down. Another story that's told here at the landfill is that at some point someone brought a goldfish bowl up here with live goldfish in it and tossed the fish into this pond. Tom Christ, the director of the landfill operations up here, shares that story with us. And did you say there's actually fish in this pond here?
There is. We've got a lot of goldfish in here. I've been here 23 years, and many years before I showed up here, I was told by the foreman during my tenure that somebody had come down here and they dumped a goldfish bowl in here, and since then we've had a fairly large stock of goldfish, which feeds the osprey and the ducks. Anybody that is hungry gets a fish. But
oh, that's awesome. Great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see if we can find any of these fish.
Okay, am I done?
Almost. We're up here at the top of the Klamath County Landfill now, where there's a series of 8 wells that tap methane that's coming out of the decomposing material that's down in this landfill. Wells ranging from 8 to 65 feet deep. They all are plumbed into this single pipe here, which comes into this pump house. There's a pump that forces the methane up this pipe and discharges into the atmosphere. Now someone's going to say, why aren't we using that methane to generate power? So I'm told by the guys who work up here at the landfill would need to generate about 1,000 cubic feet of methane per minute to have enough to generate power. On average, we're getting about 19 cubic feet per minute out of our landfill. But there is energy here. When I put my hand on this pipe here, it's nice and warm. And the temperature reading they're getting here today is just a hair under 120 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, now we're down at the bottom of the landfill, and behind us we've got a 90-foot mound of material that piled up here. Tom, you said from basically 1935 when the landfill opened until 2004. What happened in 2004?
Well, we were contacted by DEQ because we're an unlined landfill, and they said we could no longer collect municipal solid waste, which is all wet garbage, and we would be from that point on just a demolition landfill, which is just construction waste.
Okay, so I can't come up here with my leftover pizza anymore? Chicken legs, cottage cheese, can I throw that in here?
No food waste at all.
What about paint, chemicals, any of that stuff going here?
No.
Just dry stuff is all can
just
go in.
Just dry demolition debris.
Nothing that is putrescible, right?
Correct.
That is a great word.
It is.
That word, yeah. Okay, but there is a little bit of material that comes out of this heap. A little bit of liquid material.
Correct, and that's called leachate, and we have to handle it responsibly as well. And last year we generated about 10 gallons, and the way that is we use an evaporation system, which is the most economical for us, and that is this little black box here, and you lift the lid off and you line it with black plastic, dump your 10 gallons in there, let it evaporate, and then once it's evaporated, then you can collect up that black plastic and take it like to Dry Creek or a responsible landfill.
I see. So out of this entire mound of garbage here from the last 85 years, 10 gallons.
10 gallons.
That's pretty amazing. What about groundwater? Is there any concern with groundwater contamination?
There is, and we've got a professional hydrologist that's hired, and he comes in. We schedule him for at least twice a year, but he's monitoring this. The landfill manager monitors this once a month and sends him all of the details, all the data. And then he collects all that data, comes in and does all the testing himself twice a year, and once a year DEQ comes in with him and tests it with him to make sure that those figures are accurate.
So keeping a close eye on it.
Absolutely.
Good to know. All right, thanks Tom.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Almost 85 years the stuff's been piling up here at the Klamath County Landfill. Let's see what Klamath Falls residents are throwing away today. Old shop back, some of these old fishing poles, got one of these, and here's a perfectly good milk crate. Let's see what else we got out here. So what's it take to compact 85 years worth of garbage from the city of Klamath Falls? All you need is about a 70,000 pound Caterpillar. In 2018, customers of the landfill brought 25,000 tons of demolition material up here and threw it in the pit. By the way, there's another 35,000 tons that was collected by Waste Management and hauled over the hill to the Dry Creek landfill east of Medford. So that seems like quite a bit of material coming out of Klamath Falls, and the landfill's pretty big business. We might talk about fees just a little bit. For the first 20 years or so, free dumping was allowed at the city dump. In 1957, the city instituted a minimum fee of 25 cents. I'm sure that caused an uproar. Today, the minimum fee has gone up to $6. That still seems like a pretty good deal. If you raise the fees too much, of course, there's a problem with people taking their garbage out and dumping it out in the woods like they did in the old days, so we don't want that. Now, I just wanted to mention as we close here that if you live in a place or work in a place that's nice and clean and tidy, what that means is that your garbage and refuse had to go somewhere. And so if you lived in Klamath Falls for very long, that probably means that you're part of the history of the Klamath County Landfill. For the Klamath County Museum, I'm Todd Keppel. Thanks for watching.